Assignment 4.3.2 is about qualitative data collection. Qualitative data is primarily exploratory and is used to gain an understanding of any underlying reasons, any opinions or motivations about the topic at hand. Qualitative research is also used to uncover any trends or patterns in thoughts and opinions, and allows you to dive deeper into the problem. This is because you gain rich data from this, as it is about thoughts and feelings from the participants. Qualitative data collection methods vary using unstructured or semi-structured or structured techniques. The different data collection techniques include interviews, observations, and focus groups. So an unstructured interview is where there's a start question that introduces the topic in focus. Then after this question, it then flows into an informal conversation. So if the researchers interviewing a young female gymnast, they could use the start question of, how does anxiety affect your performance? And then based off of their response, they could keep talking about it and make it flow into an informal and friendly conversation. So advantages about this is that you can get lots of info out of the interviewee because it is a friendly, informal conversation and they may feel more comfortable, which leads into the second advantage about sharing information about the specific topic as it may be sensitive. There's also greater validity as again they feel more comfortable with what they're saying and may feel more confident about giving the truthful answer. A disadvantage is that you need a skilled interviewer, as being able to flow one question into a conversation is very difficult, and that you also need a small sample size as it is quite a lengthy process. The next type of interview is semi-structured. So this is where you have set questions that you use as a guide, and it's slightly formal. This allows the researcher to probe further questions off of their set question and off of the participant's response. So advantage to this is that you have the flexibility to respond or probe further questions based off of the participant's response. And it can also be used for sensitive topics, as you're building rapport as you build into a sensitive question or topic with the participant. So disadvantage is that again a skilled interviewer is required, as being able to come up with a question based off of the participant's response is a challenge itself, and you need to be able to ensure confidentiality as they may be talking about quite sensitive topics that the participant may not feel comfortable talking about, so you need to ensure that that information is kept with the two of them. The structured interview, this is where the interviewer has a set interview guide and adheres to that guide without change. So they follow their set questions that they have regardless of any response from the participants. So the advantage of this is that it focuses on the topic itself and that's it, and it doesn't stray off topic at all. And the results are easy to generalise because the participant is very limited in the way that they can answer the questions. So if the researcher interviews a population and that population says one answer, because the answer can only be so simple and basic, it's a lot easier to generalise with that population. Disadvantage is that the researcher must stick to the agreed questions and they can't probe any further questions, and the participant is limited on answers, as again the way that the questions are structured is very limited. Focus groups. So this is a group-based interview where the interaction between the group members is essential. This because the whole point of it is so that the members in the group can interact with each other and talk about the issue that's at hand. This tends to be more semi-structured than any other type, as it's more of a friendly conversation between the group members and the researcher. So advantage is that you can gain a consensus of opinions, which just means there's a general agreement. And you can observe group dynamics and social customs, as again the whole point of the focus group is to have the group members interacting with each other and talking about the issue that's at hand. Disadvantage is that it might not be representative, as the confidence in the group may vary. So if someone has a different opinion to the majority of the group, they may agree with the majority instead of saying what their opinion is, as they may not feel confident with disagreeing. And you also need a skilled interviewer again, because being able to handle multiple answers at once and using it as a semi-structured technique is a challenge. So questionnaires, they're a set of printed or written questions with a choice of answers. So it could be multiple choice or written answers. And these are devised for the purposes of a survey or statistical study. So advantages is that they're cheap and quick, as you can just quickly make them and just hand them out to people and they can just send it back to you. Quite cheap and quite quick. It's also quite simplistic again, because all you have to do is make a questionnaire, but the questions have to be quite simple as well, so that the participants know what they're trying to answer. The disadvantage is that there's no opportunity for follow-up questions, as the researcher's not there with them while they're answering. And social desirability is also a disadvantage, which just means that the participants may write a specific answer that's not true to make them try and make themselves look better in the researcher's eye. So ethical issues in interviews and questionnaires is privacy and consent, as they may be talking about very sensitive topics, and being able to ask them for permission to talk about it is very important. Protection, as again it's sensitive topics, and the participants may not want the information going public. And debriefing and support, so debriefing at the end of the interview to make sure that they're all right with what they were talking about, and making sure that they still want to continue. So observations, these are when researchers record and observe behaviours with no deliberate manipulation of variables. So they just sit back and observe and describe what they are seeing. So participant observation is where the researcher is directly involved in the session, but they're also observing. So if there's a gymnastic class, the researcher may ask the coach's permission to join in and help out, whilst also observing the session and different behaviours. Whereas non-participant observation is where the researcher isn't involved in the session. So they're just sitting back, sitting at a side, and just watching the session and describing any behaviours that they see. Disclosed observation is where the participants are told by the researcher that they are being observed. And non-disclosed is where the participants are not told by the researcher that they are being observed. So advantages for observations is that it checks for ecological validity, as most of the time they're in a natural setting and natural sporting environment. And it identifies behaviours not apparent in interviews. So if one person says in an interview that they display this type of behaviour, and then the researcher goes and observes their performance in a natural setting, they might see a completely different behaviour that they haven't said in the interview. So disadvantage is that observer effects, so this is the presence of the observer affecting the behaviours of the participants, or the observer sees a type of behaviour and they misunderstand what they see and mistake it for a different type of behaviour. So another disadvantage is the Hawthorne effect, which is where the participants know that they're being observed and they change and manipulate their behaviour because that they're being observed. And then if they're in a lab, being observed in the lab, this also decreases in ecological validity because it's not their natural setting and natural sporting environment. So ethical issues and observations is privacy, as if the researcher hasn't told them that they're being observed, the participants may feel that this is an invasion of their privacy. This also goes hand in hand with confidentiality and consent, because if the researcher hasn't told them that they're being observed without their consent, they may not like it and may not feel like it's very appropriate. And the use of findings from this observation is another ethical issue, as the participants may not want the findings of their behaviours to go public or published online.